Welcome to Life Burst. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Matt. Well, a miracle and a story of living out your passion. That's next on Life Burst.
Yes, welcome to Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. And today we are chatting with Andrew via video link. So thank you, Andrew, for coming in on today's show.
Great to have you with us.
So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Andrew, tell us, taking you way back to the beginning of your life, where did life start out for you?
Well, I was born in Bordertown, same birthplace as Bob Hawke, I tell everyone.
Oh.
And I lived the first 5 years of my life on a cattle and sheep station, which was about 20 mile out from Bordertown. And that was how I started my life.
Okay, so was farming in your blood from the beginning?
My dad was a farmer, and he, up to that time, had been working for a large pastoral company called the Scottish Australian Pastoral Company, and then he moved into the agricultural department as an advisor, and they were keen to get some ex-farmers so that farmers didn't feel like it was just some government bloke telling them what to do, but Dad was a farmer, he knew how they thought. So, yes, so we the first 5 years of my life were in Bordertown, and then we moved to Narracall, which is all in the southeast of South Australia, which is a pretty beautiful part of the world. So I was pretty fortunate.
What did you like most about living in that area of the country?
It's funny, as I get older, I realise how much I just love the open spaces, and the community was great. We had a pretty happy family life, but also had some wonderful friends and family, and just the general community. It was it's for those who've grown up in the country, you know, for the most part, it's there's some really positive aspects to it.
And in Narracall, when you moved there, were you again on a rural property, on a farm, or did things change?
No, we moved into the town, so that was a bit of a change for us. But I was pretty young, so I think we just adapted. But yes, we moved into the town. But a lot of my friends were on properties, so most of my childhood, I remember holidays and weekends, we'd be out doing whatever on the farm, and sometimes telling our mothers what we were doing, and sometimes not.
Okay, I want to know more about the times when you didn't tell your mothers what you were doing.
Yeah, here's confession time.
Yep, here it is.
We were riding motorbikes and driving vehicles and shooting guns, probably a little sooner than we should have been, but that's what we did. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Fun.
And did you grow up with some siblings around you at the time?
Yes, yep. I've got two older sisters, and who are 3 and 4 years older. So my mother said that I didn't speak very much for the first couple of years of my life because my older sisters would do the interpreting for me, as older sisters do. So I thought, oh well, I don't have. I obviously thought I didn't have to work any harder than I had to. So we're all very close, and all got our families. We all live in Adelaide, which has been nice. And shout out to my dear sisters.
Nice.
Okay, did they also shoot guns and drive motorbikes and cars when you were way too young?
Well, I don't know how much they shot guns, but they rode horses and drove vehicles, and they had fun. They enjoyed themselves. Yes, it was all good.
And how was schooling for you over there? Was school something that you loved and gravitated towards, or was it difficult years?
Look, I had a similar report card for most of my scholarly, career. It was Andrew enjoys the topics, but tends to be distracted or distracts others with his talking.
Yeah.
So we had a pretty good time. I think it's like you talk to kids now, you say, what do you like about school? They go, my friends. It was about your friends and all that sort of thing. And so I had some very patient teachers who helped me along. So that was good. Yeah.
Did you have any idea what you wanted to be when you grew up when you were a kid?
Yeah, it's funny. I think as the son of a farmer, I love the land. I always thought, oh, I'll be a farmer up to the age of 14 or 15. And then I got him, it became apparent I had a bit of a taste for music and liked, strangely enough, although I bounced around at school, but I like people and I like seeing people learn and that sort of thing. So I ended up becoming a teacher for a few years at least. And I come from a long line of teachers on the side. My mother's a teacher, her siblings are all teachers. My sister was a teacher. And so there were a lot of teachers and educators. And so that's where I ended up. But yeah, I didn't really have that many plans. But I remember at about the age of 15, I was part of the church and that sort of thing. We had a visiting youth speaker. He was a really well-known guy, and I just remember him asking me, he said, "Oh, well, what do you like? What do you like doing?" I said, "Oh, music, friends." He said, "Oh, well, follow your passion." And he just said it as an offhand remark, but he showed a genuine interest in me, and I think that's something I've passed on to a lot of other people. What are you good at? What do you enjoy? What are you passionate about? Well, do that, and sometimes people will pay you for it. So there we go. Yeah.
So did music and teaching, were they intertwined in those early years, or you took the teaching as a job and tried to find an outlet for music beyond that?
Yeah, well, I was always involved with music and drama and all that sort of thing. And we had in this country high school in Narracourt. We had a wonderful, just yeah, amazing music teachers and drama teachers, and we toured our shows to the city for the Fringe Festival and all this sort of thing. It was just amazing and such a great opportunity. And so, you could see what could happen there. And then Year 12 finished, and I wasn't quite sure, but I was advised that look, education's a good background, whatever you end up doing. And so I did music education. I went to the conservatorium and studied piano and jazz voice and all that sort of stuff, as well as doing some education topics. So, yeah, it was great. Yeah.
It's pretty serious. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I would not be the first to say I wasn't taught my class, but boy, I had some great experiences with some amazing musicians. And we were part of a jazz local ensemble. We performed with for people who know jazz, Don Burrows, James Morrison, all these people. And so it was a great experience. Yeah, you certainly learn very quickly what you didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that like being up there on stage when you were in your teenage years and being up on stage and also being in the city? That's big. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, we toured around and that sort of thing, and it was a great opportunity because you do say a large sort of project like that, musical and music. And so there's a lot of rehearsals, but you're working. You learn a lot of social skills. You learn how to work with a diversity of people, and then to be on stage, you have to learn how to be confident, even when you don't feel confident, and skills. And we were taught a lot of that, and how to bounce back, how to not be worried about a bad review. You just move on, do your best. So when I look back, I think it was incredibly fun for me.
So explain to us, how do you look confident even if you don't feel confident?
Ooh.
Well, I always say it's amazing what you can get away with a smile on your face, uh, and I think that's it. But confidence does come from within, but sometimes too there's some skills I think we can learn. As people, just to put a best foot forward, and sometimes it's just about counting to 10, taking a deep breath, going, okay, I've got this. Yes, I can do it. I'm enough. And those sort of things. But the other thing is, I think, with confidence that I found is preparedness. To be prepared, to spend those out. There's no shortcuts for preparation. You can't just wing it. No matter how gifted or talented someone might be, you've got to. You owe it to others that you're working with, or who are paying to see you, or working who in a lot of hours to practice or whatever with you. You owe it to them to put in the hours. And I had to learn that. I could wing it. I was pretty quick on my feet, but I had to learn that, no, preparation is really important.
It's good advice. Well, thanks, Andy. Now, we're going to take a break, but where you were telling us earlier that you really shouldn't be here and that there's a miracle story to tell. So when we come back from Life Burst, we'll hear more of Andy's story. This is Life Burst with Sarah and Matt. We are chatting to Andy today. And Andy, back early in life, a miracle story in your childhood. Tell us what happened.
Yes, well, when I was about 8 or 9, I contracted a virus. Now you've got to think. Well, I'm 52 now, so it was. I think today they probably would have been able to work out what it was. But anyway, they couldn't work out what it was. I went to hospital for 10 days. But basically the effect of it was I just couldn't eat. I couldn't even stand the smell of food, and so I was a little kid not eating, and they sent me home because they couldn't do anything about it. And I checked in with my mum a few years ago, actually. I said, look, yeah, how serious was it? She said, well, when the hospital sent you home and you're not better, she said, they couldn't do anything. I was just fading away.
Mm.
And so I was going to die, basically. And but a few years before that, both my parents had really come into a renewal of the Christian faith, and that included a very personal experience of what it meant to follow Jesus and what it meant to pray, and some of their friends had the same sort of experience. One of their friends had really been a follower of Jesus for a very short time. He read something in the Bible about praying for people who were sick, so he said, why don't we do that? And all the church prayed, and he came over, and all I can say is that morning they prayed for me, and I don't remember anything physically different, but almost immediately I said, I'm hungry and I want food.
Right.
And
Wow.
the doctor explained it, and I often say I've been eating ever since. So, the doctor said, well, whatever it was is gone now. And the only difference was that they prayed and humbly believed. And so I'm very grateful for their faith and obviously the medical help as well. But something happened. And I think, all the doctors said, well, that's a very unusual thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this Jesus guy, did he mean anything to you at the time?
Look, I think because my parents, as children do who grow up in a home where there's a sense of faith, you kind of imbibe that a little bit. I don't remember ever thinking, oh, there's no God or anything like that. And there was always the church community and worship songs, even if some of those songs seemed pretty old or irrelevant to me at the time. But, when you were going to die and you live, makes you think. Yeah. So I guess, as I grew, even cognitively, I think like a lot of children who grow to be a teenager and thinking more abstractly, thinking a bit more about who I am and where I'm going. And so it seemed a pretty obvious choice to decide to become a follower of Jesus and understanding what it meant to be forgiven, what it meant to not live for myself, but live for God and to serve others. And that was modeled to me by my parents and other people around me. And that was really significant. Mm.
To some people, that might sound a bit crazy, what you've just said.
Yeah.
What do you say to those people?
Well, I think I'd say two things. One is that, with people of faith and people of none, and you don't have to talk to too many doctors who will say, look, there's just things that happen that we can't explain. And I think, whereas science and medical will explain what is happening, the Bible and Christianity and faith is more focused on why it's. And I think those things are really complementary, but they're different questions. And all I'd say, look, healed or not, Jesus Christ was a person in history. There were amazing claims made about him, including rising from the dead physically, and that's had a huge impact on everyone who's believed in him. And so I say to people, look, consider it. Consider that he died for our sins, rose from the dead. What have you got to lose?
Mm. So for you, that obviously that childhood story had impact on you, but it became real for you in your teenage years, a few years later on.
Yeah. Well, and that, and the combination of being involved with Christian community, and really some wonderful people who I thought, wow, that they're very serious about following Jesus, and they've got integrity in their life, and they seem to be loving and joy filled, and they seem to have something that I didn't have, and so whereas I knew about God, I needed to, as one of them said to me, Andy, you just need to know God. It's not just about knowing about God, but knowing Him, and you can know that through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and just to ask Him to become the leader and Savior of your life. And that's what I did, and yeah, that changed everything.
So was it like a really special moment of, putting your hands off and screaming stuff, or like, what does
Well,
that look like, what you
yeah,
just
well,
said?
I mean, look, for me, it was a fairly quiet sort of thing. We were at a church youth camp, and the meeting had finished. And I don't know what everyone else was doing, but I was just sitting on the seat there, just thinking. And there was a cross actually on the wall, a of where Christ died. And I looked at that, and it was just this thought. I still remember this thought: He died for me. He died for me. And I think that was it, pretty much. Now, I've seen, my healing, and I've certainly seen what I would say, and the Bible would testify, as the power of God in many ways. But that point was a very quiet, personal, but powerful moment. Yeah.
Mm.
Right. So life was pretty dandy from there on, I imagine, until this point that you're talking to us now, or was it not?
Look, a few ups and downs,
Mm.
Okay.
and a wise person said to me when I had started to follow Jesus, they said, "Well, this doesn't mean you don't have trouble." In fact, Jesus said that. He said, "Look, in this world you will have trouble," and so it's like the whole thing of healing. Some people are healed, some people aren't. It's not. It's a mystery. And we don't know why certain things happen, why certain things don't happen. We believe for the best, but in the midst of that, we have, it's knowing that we have Christ who has promised to never leave us or forsake us, but also that, not just our physical family, church family, a spiritual one, and they're there to support us. So that's a big thing about it.
Now, I would like to know, how did you meet your significant other?
Yes, Stephanie. Yes. Well, so I moved from the country to the city to study, and my sisters had a friend, and they introduced me to their friend, and I thought, I reckon we could be friends. And so when that we started off as friends, but I did have some thoughts in mind to make her more than a friend, and that was the age of 17. At the age of 20, we got married, and the
Ooh.
rest is history. Yeah.
Right. How did you propose to her then?
Well, look, proposals these days are quite the thing. But as some of my friends and both male and female have testified, that proposals weren't quite the big thing. There was no, you didn't film it and put it on Instagram or anything like that. So we were down and visiting my parents in the country, and actually standing out under the starry skies. But it was in my parents' driveway, so that's probably not the most romantic.
Were they watching?
If you looked up, it was romantic.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
There-
Were your parents watching?
oh no,
Okay.
I,
But she said yes. She said yes, and that's
yeah,
romantic.
he
Yeah,
laughed.
that's
Did
good.
laugh, and I thought, that's not sounding good. But then she said,
I
Nice.
was just laughing. It'd be like funny to just imagine like your mum just poking her head through the curtains or something, going, "Oh, what are they up to?" But yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah. Well, no doubt, but no, it was.
Great. Well, Andy, thank you for sharing with us. There's much more story to share. So we'll be back here on Life Verse right after this with more of Andy's story.
Welcome back to Life Bursts with Matt and Sarah. Today we're chatting with Andrew. Now, I've just asked you the question about how you proposed to your now wife and you're married and you're studying, teaching, and music. What did life look like from there?
Yes, well, we got married, and we were still part of a church community in the Adelaide Hills, and I started teaching. Steph was a teacher as well, so she was teaching, and but we also involved with some music, and so started a band, and we did some recording of music and talking about our faith and music and all that sort of thing, as well as being part of running some youth, helping run our local youth program. And so it was a busy time, starting teaching and all that sort of thing as well. And it was a little Christian school in Adelaide, and they were very patient with me. So I was making a lot of mistakes, but they were very good to me, and we saw a lot of young people learn a lot about themselves, about faith, about music, and all the other things. So, yeah, that was the first few years of our marriage. Yeah.
So I want to know more about this band. What was its name? What type of music was it?
Yeah.
Well, look, it's a long time ago. The band was called Moving House, and so we travelled around. We played in, oh, goodness me, schools, prisons, churches, festivals, all that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of fun. And I had some wonderful musos working with me. They were just fantastic players and good people, and so we had a lot of fun.
And is there like one particular highlight from that time?
Well, it really came to a point in sort of after about 3 years of doing that, both Stephanie and I, again, we were followers of Jesus. We were going, well, what is God really wanting us to do here with our gifts and talents and abilities? And I actually had a chat with my principal at the school, who was a follower of Jesus. And he just turned and he said, Andrew, I don't think you're going to be here next year. I think something's going to change for you. And absolutely, something shifted. Stephanie and I went away for a few days just to think and talk and pray about things. And she woke up one morning and had a dream, and she had a dream about two things. She said, one, we had resigned from our jobs for doing full-time music and talking with people about Jesus and traveling. Secondly, we had a baby. And unbeknownst to us, she was actually pregnant right then. She was already pregnant. But she had this dream. And so by the end of that year, we had resigned from our jobs, and we had a baby and started a ministry and with some supporters and that sort of thing. That's what we did for about 5 years.
Wow.
Okay. How did you live? What did you live in?
Yeah. Yeah, well, we rented a house, and some people were very kind to us about that. And yeah, there were supporters, a group of, a couple of hundred people who in our local church who released us and then supported us in that. And yes, there were over 3 years. We looked at the amount of money and we lived pretty basically, but the number of bills that went out was larger than the amount of money that came in, but every bill was paid and we had some left over. So you can call that a miracle. I don't know, but there's a passage in the Bible that says God provides. God provides, and that's what we saw. Yeah, it was a time of a lot of trust. Yeah.
Were you ever worried or concerned during that time?
Oh, probably.
Well, just the picture you've painted is that, it was all happy and the bills were paid, even though they were too big and we didn't have lots of money coming in. And so, yeah, it just makes it sound like it was a real fun time.
Well, it was exciting, and we had a lot of joy there, but there was also challenging. There were times I was traveling on the road, and Stephanie was back home with Lockie, our first child, and then she had a miscarriage, and I was a long way away, and I had to make a decision. The people who booked me to come, they were sort of quite keen for me just to stay, and I said, "Oh, I can't stay. I've got to be home. It's family first." And I knew at that point that I had to make a decision about what my priorities were, as much as I love the ministry and the music and the people, but Stephanie and our house and our home and family were the first priority. And that meant a lot to her at that time. And I'm glad we did that, and we got through that uh, with a lot of love and support. And those who lost a child or had miscarriages, it's a difficult time. We understand. But came along, and life got busy. Life was busy.
How did that affect you? The
Having
loss
more
of the child.
loss of a child. Yeah, it was. So we had some really wise people in our church community who came alongside us, and I think it's talked about a lot more now. It was talked about a bit then, but there was a generation where no one ever talked about that. But they came alongside us and said, this is a real grief, this is a real loss, and I think that was helpful to us at that time, because we had to grieve the loss of this baby who we'd never known. And it gave us a great sense of compassion, because for us, we were enough to be able to have other children, but there's some people who that has been an experience over and over and over again, and no children at all. So that created a lot of compassion in us for people who've been going through that.
Yeah, thanks for being so open to sharing that with everybody listening or watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Andy, back on those ministry years, what were are there any stories or things that impacted you where you saw this is making an impact on people, and this is really worthwhile? Any moments that were particularly stood out?
Yeah, well, like I said, we were in schools, we were in prisons, we did festivals, concerts, all sorts of things. So, and we worked closely mainly with Christian faith communities in those areas as well. So I would say I saw the best and the worst. You saw some very, very sad stories, particularly in prisons, but even with some young people in school. And I think I could see that the culture had shifted. It wasn't my warm country upbringing where a lot of people went to Sunday school or whatever. It had changed profoundly, and with that, people were asking big questions and not necessarily assuming that God would be the answer to those questions. There was a lot of changes culturally, socially during that time. It was we'd come out of a national, pretty much the worst depression economically we'd ever had, and that had shaped things. And there were new challenges for young people in a nuclear age. With uncertainty, the Gulf War, the first Gulf War started. So people were asking questions, and so on one level, very challenging, but on the other level, it helped me to understand that I couldn't talk just sort of as I would talk maybe to people who were of faith. I had to shape my language, but essentially as Jesus shaped his language, to be able to talk to people who were of faith and none, and what that meant, to be able to listen to people's story and hear their real questions and respond to that. And we saw great things happen. We saw people make the same decision as I did at the age of 14 to become a follower of Jesus. We saw people who maybe weren't ready to make that step, but we're helped by the music, or by the Christian community, or just the fact that someone had listened to them and taken the time. And so all those things happened. We saw, talking about miracles, we saw some really amazing things happen. When I read in the Bible, particularly in the New Testament, the last quarter of the Bible, what happened for the Jesus followers, where there were really significant things that can't be explained by natural means. But we prayed for people, and incredible things happened. And I'll never forget some of those things. Yeah.
So you not only experienced miracles yourself, but you were now a part of seeing that happen in other people's lives.
Absolutely. As much as I'm standing here today, I can only say I saw what I saw. Yeah, yeah. And some of those people I bumped into 5 years, 10 years, 30 years later who've said, absolutely, that's what happened. Whether it was spiritual or physical or emotional or whatever, but something happened that they said changed their life. And that's been amazing. Yeah.
Great. Well, this is Life Burst. You're with Sarah and Matt, and we're chatting to Andy. And when we come back, we'll hear more of his story.
Welcome back to Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. Today we're chatting with Andrew, and I am really curious to hear about some of these miracle stories of people being healed, because it's something that's not really talked about very much. So could you share some of them with us, please?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, we said we travelled around, and then I was a youth pastor at a church called Aberfoyle Uniting, which is now called Seeds United Church, and I was made the youth pastor, and we saw that grow from 30 young people to 200 young people over a period of about 18 months, and we had a lot of interaction with the high school. It was the largest high school in the state, so we had a lot of young people and that sort of thing, and a lot of it was, some of it was quite incidental. We'd just pray for people, and things would happen. We saw people who had, physical health issues that we prayed for, from as small as a headache, and we'd pray and the headache's gone. Right through to, I would say some pretty sizable issues that people had. And as we prayed, there was breakthrough. There was things that changed, and we've seen people who've even had quite serious diagnoses, and they've gone to the doctor afterwards and they've said, look, I don't know what it is, but that's gone. And look, it's not a foolproof thing. It's there's some people that we've prayed for and that hasn't worked out like that, but at least they've known the love and comfort of friends and family and the Lord in the midst of that. And really, the biggest miracle has been people who would come into the meetings or the youth ministry or the church we're involved with, and they just, life didn't really mean much, and then just somehow during the talk or the music or whatever, just to lift up their hands. I still remember this one guy, and he spent time with organised crime, all sorts of stuff. His life was a bit of a mess, but he lifted up his hands. Something's happened. Something's happened. I just know that God loves me. I know that I'm forgiven. I know that I'm free, and that was a big turnaround in his life. And so, this is what happens. This is what Jesus wants to do. Jesus said, I've come that you might have life, and life to the full. And we believe that promise over and seen that over and over again.
So you keep saying pray, like I prayed and stuff happened, prayed and this happened, I prayed and this happened and prayed. Like you said, you prayed. What did you pray? What did you say? Like, explain to us a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Well, the older I get, and the wisdom that other people much more wise and gifted than I gave me was just keep it simple. Keep it simple. So sometimes it's just, Jesus, the situation. Would you just minister your power and your healing right now, and just be open to that. And sometimes it's been as simple as that. But the Bible says, whoever calls on the name of the Lord, God will hear, God will save. And so we've seen, now I'm a pastor of a church for 18 years here in in Adelaide called The Journey, and we also do online services, but we've seen that, and in our services, every week something can happen where we just go, look, just ask the Holy Spirit to come, and we just pray very simply, Jesus, please minister your power, your healing, and then we just see what happens. And people experience God's presence and God's power, God's healing. It doesn't necessarily solve all the problems that everyone has, but at the very least, people have a great strength and confidence to face life again. And they're not alone. They've got God, they've got Christian community, and people all around who love them and are supporting them.
So, Andy, it sounds like, and I guess it comes back to your early childhood experience, that for you, faith is not an academic type of thing or even a ritual, but there is something very real about it, and something that you continue to see expressed and lived out in a way that can't be explained. Yeah, would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say faith doesn't have an intellectual rigor to it. I've done, I've got 2 degrees and studied the Bible and looked at all the reasons why and what for, and that sort of thing. And, we've got some wonderful people who have just an amazing gift. They got doctorates in science and all sorts of stuff. So that contributes to it. That's a support to it. But there's also just this point of, those things answer what, but God answers why. And when you know the why, that whether you've got an education or not, whatever you've experienced or haven't experienced, whatever you know or don't know, but when you know the why and the who loves you and has a plan and a purpose for your life, that makes such a difference, And that was a big difference in my life, probably about 10, 15 years ago. We had young children, and I was finding, particularly in the morning and the evening, I was finding it very difficult to just function. And I prayed about it, and I found my emotions get irritated and this sort of thing. And my wife spoke to me. She said, the kids are noticing this. And so I went to the doctor and I said, look, this is what's happening. And he said, I think you might have classic depression. I said, really? But I prayed about it. He said, that's good. You prayed about it. That's part of it. But we talked about that. And so I went on. He was a psychiatrist who'd become a GP, a really lovely guy. I don't know if he was a believer or not, but he sure understood me. And so I went on a medication thing. It's a very light medication. But he said, look, that's 50% of it. The other 50% of it is look after yourself, keep positive in faith and family. And that made such a difference. And so I often say to people, that was my real experience with mental health, I guess. And that's talked about a lot more now than even it was 15 years ago. But I was so glad that I was given the opportunity to meet with someone skilled about that, to talk, and I had a supportive spouse, and we moved on with that. I changed some of the hours that I was working as well, a bit of lifestyle stuff and also positive stuff, but also understanding, look, for me, part of my life is every day I've got a little pill that I take that is part of God's gift to us from the medical world to go, this can lower the waterline a little bit so that we can function better. So that's another part of my story,
You're telling us that you believe in this Jesus guy and everything just seemed to be so wonderful and great, but then this happened. Why?
Yep.
Why would God or Jesus allow that to happen to you if you loved him so much and cared for him? Why would he let that happen to you?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, look, for me, it was a fairly simple solution, but there's people who've had terrible things happen, terrible losses of children, and you just wouldn't. It's unspeakable. It's just so sad what's happened, and sometimes that's caused us to ask why. And the fact is, in the Bible, it doesn't say why. In fact, the Bible critiques. There was a guy called Job. He had terrible things happen to him, and his friends tried to give some fairly simplistic answers to that. Well, in the end, Job said, no, we don't know why. I'll have to trust God, and he's enough for me. And it was Job who was justified before God, and it was his friends who got told off by God because God said, no, you can't make sense of all this. Only I can. And that's part of our life. Jesus did say, you'll have trouble in this life, but take heart because I've overcome the world. I will never leave you nor forsake. So we don't know what's around, but we know who is going to be with us when we go around.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Andy. We are chatting to Andy here on Life Burst with Matt and Sarah, and when we come back, we'll hear the final part of his story and perhaps some advice and wisdom, or some more wisdom along the way.
Welcome back to Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. Today we're chatting with Andrew, and we're on our last segment of the show. And you've talked about your children. What was it like being a parent when they were younger, and has that changed now that they're older?
Well, yeah, life changes, and the key to parenting is to be parenting to the child you have, not the child you think you should have. And so at different ages, the children need different things from you, and your spouse needs different things. And so I'm not, I didn't always get that right, but we worked that out together because life is a journey together. In fact, we called our church Journey Church because of that. That life's a journey. And so in each phase, what children need, or what a teenager needs, or a young adult needs, and an adult needs, it's different relationship stages. And so that's been a big part of our life too. And it's been a great joy for us. And we've been very fortunate, they've all been well and healthy and that sort of thing. And we've had friends who've had some really difficult challenges with their kids through no fault of their own, maybe through illness or just some misunderstandings that have happened. And so, we spend a lot of time now just speaking into different people's age and stage of life, and encouraging them, equipping them, strengthening them, and also to particularly with younger people, but older people too, don't forget your passion. Work in your gifts, work in your abilities. Know what your personality is. I often think of shape, the word shape, SHAPE, which can represent S for spiritual, what's having that relationship with God, the H for your heart, your passions, if you like, the A for your abilities. What's your skills? What do you bring to the table? What do you love doing? And your P for personality. Some people are more people. Some people are more task people. Some people like loud. Some people like quiet. Know your personality and know other people's personalities. There's no wrong personality. It's just about supporting that. But the last one is E, and that's your experiences. And, it's one thing to say, well, I can learn from my good experiences, but we also learn from our hard experiences, from the dark times, and learning and responding and getting through those things, but also learning how to be a help to others. Sometimes our greatest impact is going to be the places of pain in our life. And as Stephanie and I said, we've the loss of a child, for the mental health journey, that sort of thing. I was just talking with someone the other day who's struggling a bit, and so we were able to share our story, and sometimes it's from our pain that the greatest help comes. So, if someone was to give me ask, what do you need, and somehow it's a lot of people seem to be asking that. We're both pastors now of a church, and 60% of our church is under 30. So there's a lot of younger people finding their way in the world, and they ask, how do you do marriage? How do you do family? How do you do life? What's the best decision? And the first thing I would say is get to the source. Consider following Jesus Christ. Consider asking him to reveal himself to you. And once we get connected with our Creator, we find out more about what we're meant to be. And I think the second one is to be part of community. We've got our family, we've got our friends, but to be part of a Christian community as well. I'd encourage you to check that out. And make sure, we all needed at least 5 people in our life who we could really talk to if things are difficult. So community is really important. But the last thing is cause, our purpose, and to know what your purpose is, and to be a person who's not just after the dollar, or, taking a job because it's got a lot of money. That might be helpful for your family or necessary for your family, but also what your family and the people you love most need from you is, and from me, is for us to be fully alive, to be in our passion and in our area, and to be present. I've found the power of presence. I'm only here because people were truly present to me. Don't be the person at the party who's talking with someone and trying to look for someone else more interesting to talk to. Be present to people, be present to yourself. And there's nothing like showing up. If you want to make a difference, you've got to show up, you've got to be there and be the best that you can be for that situation and those people. So that's what we've learned a lot. And, you know, there's great hope in that, and my faith informs that. But, you know, it's suffice to say we're in a time of great disruption now. And I think post-COVID and, you know, there's a war in Europe and tension in the Asian area, Asia-Pacific area. But you know, the Bible says, look, even if the mountains give way, God's still faithful. And there's hope and there's purpose. And sometimes the shaking, I'm not saying God sends it, but I do think God can use that, and we can grow in that and actually work out what's most important in life, and focus on those things. And there is hope, there is purpose, and I truly believe the best is yet to come. So that's what I say. And we're looking forward to what God's going to unfold in the future for us.
Yes. And you've talked a lot about Jesus and a lot about God and a lot about the church over your whole interview, the time that we spent with you today. But is there other things that you do that isn't God and isn't Jesus and isn't hanging out with your family? Like, are there other things that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, we've come to value great friends. You know, one writer talks about the happy few, you know, some of those lifelong friends. And
Yeah.
we've just gone on a holiday with some of them as well, people we've known since we were 5 years old. And so, you know, having those friends in life that you can laugh with and that you enjoy things with, I think, you know, the physical keeping fit and that sort of thing, I could be a lot fitter than what I am. But, you know, mow the lawn, smell the roses, you know, get out there, and that's been a really good thing. Steph and I, we love having people over for meals and catching up with good friends and family. And I think that for me, you know, the list of achievements that I've done or haven't done over my life are pretty much very much secondary to the people who have meant a lot to me, and that I can mean a lot to them, hopefully. I think those things are really important. And opportunities, you know, we had an opportunity a few years ago that came out of the blue to travel, to see Europe and UK, and I went to Palestine and Israel and Amman, and yeah, it was amazing, and we had a ball. Yeah, so you know, life's very interesting, and we need to be interested and curious. And I've learnt the value of doing that as well.
And is music still a part of your life as well?
Yeah, it is. I mean, a lot of my creative stuff comes more from some of my ministry and leadership sort of stuff, my speaking, but my children are all musical. In fact, particularly my oldest son, he's a worship and creative pastor and writes a lot of songs and produces music and all media and all that sort of thing. So he loves doing that. And
Is he a part of a band that we should know about?
yeah, well,
Give
they
him a
have
plug.
a band called Fearless, and
Very
those
cool.
songs Faith and Hope, and they're doing very well, and talking with producers and all that sort of thing all over in Nashville and UK, and so they're doing really well with that. And yeah, all my kids, I've always said to them, do what you love and love what you do. And they're all involved with different things and in their zone, you know, doing what they want to do, and we're just cheering them on. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your time today in sharing with us. And you've left so many pieces of advice with us and shared so much wisdom and so much knowledge. It's excellent. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I hope that, you know, well, that's my story. And everyone's got a story, and I'm fascinated to hear more interviews that you're doing with different people and their story. So thanks for that.
Look at that.
You've covered a lot of ground.
You have, you really have.
Yeah, I love hearing it. Thanks for your passion, your energy, and for doing what you do as well.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate it. This is Life Bursts. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sarah. You can catch up with us wherever you get your podcast from on YouTube and Facebook, community television, and radio.
Don't forget, you can catch us each week as we bring more stories. You can join Andy in hearing the stories of others. It might be your next door neighbour who'll be up next. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Life Bursts is hosted by Matthew Karat and Sarah Freeman, with production by Reese Jarrett and Kay Hoshraw Ozadigan. For more episodes of Life Bursts, go to rawcut.com.au. This is a RawCut production.